Are we as conservatives learning kind of a lesson here? Do we get mad when the people kind of send the establishment a message, or do we take it to heart and kind of say, gosh, we must not be doing something? We the establishment must be missing the message here from the people. Whether you look at the rise of Ron Paul or the rise and fall and rise again of Newt Gingrich, something profound I think is going on, and I don't think it's just Newt lashing out at the media. I think that's just one element of what's happening here.
Well, Laura, this is my 12th presidential campaign, and one thing I learned very early on: the closer you get to the grassroots, to the average rank and file Republican, the more conservative our party is. Now, that's been the case as long as I've been involved in Republican politics, which goes back to the '68 campaign. The closer you get to the grassroots, the more conservative our party is. And this is a campaign where we didn't have a true front runner. We had a large field, and historically, a large field means that there's not some really strong candidate. Mm-hmm. And so we've had a lot of voices, and they've gone up and down and up and down. And a lot of people right now are saying to themselves, Bill Buckley's great adage, we want to nominate the most conservative person who can win in November. Mm-hmm. And that's what they're trying to look at. I was surprised. In South Carolina, 67% in the exit polls said they wanted to vote for the person who had the best chance to beat Obama. That doesn't surprise me from the sense of what people say to me all the time, because that's what I hear more than anything else. Who's got the best chance to beat Obama? I want to be for the one who can beat Obama. But I was surprised that most evangelical Christians in South Carolina, the question in their mind was, who's got the best chance to beat Obama? That's the right question, and then the most conservative one that the answer is yes.
Yeah, well, and a couple of new polls that are out show that people think that Gingrich is the best person to beat Obama. And in a head-to-head matchup in Florida right now, I think they're neck and neck: Romney, Obama, Gingrich, Obama. So I think the argument that Romney is invincible because he's the most electable, that argument seems to be washing away. And on a follow-up to that, Governor Barbour, how does Mitt Romney now fight hard and win in these southern states?
Well, of course, Florida's a big, diverse, different state. South Carolina, Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, we're much more southern in behavior than Florida is. But don't get me wrong, I'm not making the argument that Romney is the most electable. I thought what was very powerful was that people had voted for Newt in South Carolina. They thought he was the most electable, that Newt was the most electable. And that was perfectly clear. If this contest is going to go a good bit farther, I believe, different people are going to win. Let's face it, Laura, 3 months ago, if you had asked me, is Romney going to win South Carolina, I laughed. Then he had this big swell, and now it's receded. Now let's see how we get back into a more normal situation. And I'm not sure it's fully a two-man race. I think Rick Santorum is being shortchanged in public opinion, but he does have the problem that it's very hard for number 3 to get around number 2 and be number 1. And right now, we don't know if Romney or Newt's number 1 or number 2, but they're clearly the two out front. And if you look at Jack Kemp in 1988 or a lot of other things, it's hard to make it from third to first. But Santorum has got some things going for him, and he is not perceived as having some of the negatives that Mitt and Newt have.
Right. I think that's right, exactly right, and he definitely deserves the respect and coverage in this. And I think you pointed to it's hard to get around 2 and 1. It is, because you don't get the media attention perhaps that you need in a state like Florida. Governor, just specifically with Romney in the South, though, how does Massachusetts campaign in Alabama and win?
Well, not easy. But, remember John McCain from Arizona beat Mike Huckabee from Arkansas and South Carolina last time. And it's not – the South is slightly more conservative within the Republican Party, but not a whole lot more conservative. It is different from the Midwestern states or Florida. But Romney has got to run as a strong economic conservative who can who's for the right policies that will turn the economy around and will thwart these efforts of Barack Obama to have a government run everything in our lives. And he's got to be forceful about that. One of the things I do admire about Mitt, he has been willing to take on the entitlement state. There are a lot of politicians who are afraid to say, we've got to control entitlement spending because so many people get Social Security, get Medicare, get all these entitlements. But he's had the courage to step up and say that.
Yeah, but he trashed Perry about the
like that
yeah,
about
but he trashed Perry on the Ponzi scheme comment too. Remember that? I think Perry was more right than Mitt on Social Security, and Mitt, I think looking at Florida, said whoa, and really piled on Perry on that. So I hear you, and I think Mitt has great strengths that he hasn't quite tapped into yet, but right now, I mean, you have to see where the people's heads are. People are not listening to, I'd say, Chris Christie, who says Newt is an embarrassment. He has embarrassed the party, and he's a failed leader. Romney said Newt is a failed leader. Is that how you saw him when you were head of the RNC, a failed leader?
Well, of course, when I was head of the RNC, we won the biggest midterm majority sweep of the 20th century in 1994, and he was at the very, very front of it and deserves enormous credit for it. And they did contract with America. They did exactly what they said, the first balanced budget in a generation, welfare reforms, huge accomplishments in that period of time. So I don't discredit Newt a bit on what was done then. And I would say, again, what's important, it was done for good policy that works. Romney's done some things in this campaign, talked about things that are good policy. We Republicans want this election to be about policy because if Obama's policies and the results of those policies are what this is a referendum on, he cannot win. Obama cannot win on his record. Now, I don't mind hard-fought elections and all the negatives that have come out. Obama's going to spend 10 times more money talking about him. I'm not even worried about that. I am worried we're not taking advantage of the opportunity to tell the American people more why Barack Obama ought not to be president, why his policies are bad for our country. And I hope this doesn't turn out personal, that it gets bitter and personal so that whoever wins won't be supported by whoever loses. That would be tragic for our country. Not just for our party, for our country, because we got to have a new president.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that Newt reached out to all the candidates in his speech. I mean, he's hitting hard in Florida, as is Romney, but he's like, look, all of these men deserve respect and for getting as far as they've gotten in politics and in their business life, and I like that. I think that Romney's making it pretty personal now, though. I mean, it's failed leader, embarrassment. You heard Haley Barbour. He was, 1994. People forget. It's been decades and decades since the Republicans dominated Congress. And it doesn't mean Newt did everything right. He obviously had his big flaws. But I think, Governor, you can't take that away from him. And it seems like a lot of people want to do that in one fell swoop.
Well, almost every one of these candidates at one time or another said something that every Republican knows is true. Any one of them would be better than Barack Obama.